Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1375. The topic is Q&A and the title is Learning to Parent Yourself. Now, kind of an interesting topic. We had a new client now, but they had sent in an email through our website, and they kind of talk through their story, and I want to share what they're struggling with, and then how we all can kind of learn from what they're learning from. So they reached out on the website, and they're a personal trainer, and they have like a small studio in their kind of like hometown, like where they grew up. And they have clients from 5:30 in the morning to 10:30 in the morning. Then they have kind of midday to themselves, and then they have clients again 4:30 to 7:30. And that is kind of typical, like personal training is typically done when people are out of work. So the most common times for personal training sessions are either, super early in the morning or later in the evening. So they've been struggling that they really, and this is the way they're writing it, is they say they only work 8 hours a day, which they're actually being overly hard on themselves. They have 8 hours of face-to-face time with clients, but they're actually doing way more than that. But they say they're only working 8 hours a day. They're paying their bills. They're actually making profit. And it seems like what they're doing was exactly what they wanted, but it's not. They're struggling. So they know how to train, they know how to eat right, but they're struggling with motivation. They're struggling with self-discipline. They said they're in a rut of, after their last morning client, they'll get some food in themselves, they'll take notes on the clients, edit their programs, plan ahead for the evening people, and then usually around 2, they could work out. But they say they often find themselves just wanting to lay down and take a nap, or they'll watch something on YouTube or Instagram. They mentioned the Reels, like Reels. They'll get lost in the Reels on Instagram, and they just notice sometimes they just don't work out, and they're frustrated, they're angry, they're mad at themselves. They've started and stopped a bunch of times, and they said every day they have 1 to 2 hours to work out. They're already in their studio, so they have the equipment, but they're struggling. They're then caught, the reason why they reached out was they were thinking about signing up to be a client, but they felt embarrassed to do so. Now, this is actually, half my clients are personal trainers, and I actually went through this exact experience whenever I started Brutal Iron Gym, which I'll talk about here in a second. But it isn't abnormal for trainers to get trainers, especially when they're starting their own business and or when they're just trying to learn more things. So I've been a personal trainer now for 20 years. I've trained over 3,000 people. I have a bunch of certifications, a bunch of experience with beginners all the way to professional athletes, Olympic athletes. So I'm a pretty good resource. So that's why one of the services I do work with people is like business development, where we do virtual consultations every week. We talk about what's going on with business. So it's been fun. This is what this client is wanting to do in terms of service, which I love that. That's one of my favorite things I get to do right now, is just when you invest into somebody who is a trainer, you know then that you're investing into everyone that they work with. So it's very rewarding. So it's all about me, but it's very rewarding for me. That's a good thing. So helping other people helps me. That's a good thing. But what I wanted to say to this person and to you, if you are struggling with this, is if you're giving the best you possibly have and you're just burned out, you're gone, there's nothing left. So things that are very important to you are just falling off, like eating healthy, like exercising. But yet you're crushing it with work, you're crushing it with your family, you're crushing it financially, you're doing all these other things amazingly well, but in this one area, you're just crash and burned. Well, there's a podcast that can help. I'm going to give a lot of podcasts in today's podcast, so all of these would be good to check out at some time if you have the time. Podcast 279 is a mindset podcast titled Work With Yourself. And what we talk about in that one is you have an ideal in your head, like where you want to go. So for this listener, the ideal in their head is, they train their morning clients, they get food, do the paperwork, and then they have 2 hours to just crush the gym and do everything they've ever always wanted. And then they train their clients in the evening, and then they get to go home. So that's their ideal. So we all have that with whatever we're struggling to be consistent with, is we have an ideal in our head where you want to go. But That's not where you are right now. That's not where you are yet. What do you need at this moment to step closer to ideal? That's kind of the idea here. Is no, you can't just turn on being perfect like a switch. You have to work up to it. It's a process. So as a trainer, they would understand, and even as a general listener, is if a client comes in and they say they want to squat twice their body weight, you can't just go, okay, and then boom, it happens. That'd be awesome if you could. We'd all be, like all the trainers in the world would be billionaires. But there's a process to it. You have to kind of meet them in person or like video chat. You have to see their movement patterns. You have to learn about their abilities, their past experiences, if they have injuries, what their schedule is, what their preference is. It's a process. You have to learn a lot about the person. You have to create a game plan, and you have to work this game plan. They can't just come in on day one and do it. They need steps. They need to build up to it. And you may need that as well. So you have this ideal in your head of what you want to do, what you want to be in all areas of life. And if you're expecting yourself to just start that, like, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be perfect. Oh my gosh, you've probably been disappointed quite a few times. So it just doesn't turn on like that. So as I said, when I started Brutal Iron Gym, I opened the gym in 2011, so I've been doing it for over 10 years now. And I've been training before that, but this is now like my own kind of location, my own gym, which is pretty cool. When I started it, I was training 10 to 12 hours a day, a minimum of 50 hours a week, face-to-face, in person with clients. So most of the time I was at like 55, maybe up to 60. But I remember the first couple of years, I didn't work less than 50 hours a week of in-person, face-to-face clients. Now, at that time, I was trying to build my brand. I was trying to build my reputation because I had moved from where I grew up. I had a good enough reputation where I grew up, but I wanted to move south. I wanted to have warmer weather, get away from the winter. So whenever I moved south and I started in a new place, I had to kind of start brand new. No one really knew who I was. So I started training at $20 an hour, and I wrote their nutrition programs and training programs for the days we didn't meet for free. They also got to come in and use the gym for free. I was insane. And whoever worked with me at that time, that would have been the best deal of your entire life, and I hope you enjoyed it. I actually had most of my clients were telling me, yeah, you have to charge a lot more because you're going to kill yourself. Because I was just dead. Absolutely 100% dead. It was 50 hours a week, face-to-face, plus writing all of their workouts, all of their programming. I cleaned the gym. I bought new equipment for the gym. I did all the financial paperwork and recordings. I mean, I slept on the floor of my office more often than I went home to my apartment. So I was where this listener is you're giving every single ounce you have to a goal, and there is just nothing left. Flat out nothing left. Now, I was still able to train 3 to 4 times a week. Part of that was because I had people show up to train with me. I was like, yeah, I got clients till 8. Can you come at 8 and we'll start around like 8:15? So I would be absolutely dead tired, but they're walking through the door, they're fired up and ready to go. I'm looking at them like, oh, I can't just cancel this. So I go into the office, change my shoes, get a drink, and step out and get going. But I remember in the first month, I lost 20 pounds. So in the first 30 days, I lost 20 pounds of like when I opened the gym and started training people that much. And I ended up losing, I think, 30 or 40 pounds over the first 2 months. It was ridiculous. I lost so much weight. It was half of it was muscle because I just couldn't eat enough. I was dead tired. It was absolutely miserable. It was a grind. And that's where this listener is finding themselves. And that's where you might be finding yourself. You're trying to do everything. So you are grinding away and you are giving the absolute best that you have. But there isn't just enough of that to go around. There isn't enough of your best to cover all of the things that you want to achieve. You know the things are important, like the ones that you're missing on. You know they're important. Like healthy eating, like training regularly. You know they're important. You just don't have anything more to give to it. So it's not that you're not disciplined. It's not that you're mentally weak. It's not that you're, absolutely nothing is like wrong with you, or anything like that. There's nothing to feel negative about yourself in any way whatsoever. Don't feel negative about yourself. you're just done. You're maxed out. You've actually reached kind of the limits of what you could give. So that's where today's podcast, referencing like parenting yourself, is a very challenging balance in life, is to push yourself to the best of your abilities, but then give yourself grace when your abilities are used up and or don't quite match in that moment, or you make a bad choice, when you make a mistake, when you mess up. You know, when your nutrition drops off to try to meet a deadline at work, when you drop off training to kind of focus on something else that's really important. Give yourself grace in those moments. So I was blessed with parents who knew that balance of pushing yourself but giving you grace very well. They pushed my brother and I, but they also helped and gave us grace and corrective feedback when we messed up, which was great. You know, they absolutely helped us learn how to push ourselves, develop ourselves, but then also give ourselves grace when we needed it. To identify what our current abilities are, expecting the best of them, expecting to continue to develop those abilities so we can grow over time. But when we overreach, when we hit the wall, to say, it's okay. Breathe. And then get back at it. And do so without putting yourself down. Like that's what my parents were able to do for us. My parents never berated my brother and I if we made mistakes. They would just say, well, that didn't go well. Here's probably why it didn't go well. Here's what you can do the next time. So they were super awesome and super supportive. And I think that's the part that we miss whenever we talk to ourselves. Often, like chances are if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably the type of person who pushes yourself to the max. And then whenever you burn out, you fizzle out, you miss some things, you make a bad choice, you beat the living crap out of yourself and think that you're, piece of crap. And you're not. You're a freaking awesome human being. You're probably crushing a lot of things. You're probably getting a hell of a lot more things right in life than you're getting wrong. And that's where, kind of to me, the parenting aspect makes sense given my background. Now, I understand I'm incredibly, insanely blessed to have had parents who were supportive like that. And that's kind of, I understand that is something that exists for me that might not exist for others. But that's the balance that we're trying to find for ourselves. So if you weren't parented in this way, you can think of this as how you would parent. So if you were to have children, how would you treat your children? You would expect them to kind of do the best of what they were capable of. You'd expect them to continue to develop their best over time. But whenever they overreached, whenever they hit the wall, when they made a mistake, you would say, hey, it's okay. Here's the lessons we can learn from this, but it's okay. You're doing fine. Just get back at it. Keep going. You would find that balance. It's a hard balance, but it's the balance of motivating, supporting, and pushing, but then also giving grace. That's very, very hard. I've also been blessed that, like, I have my wife. My wife is amazing at this as well. So she helps motivate me, support me, and she does it always in a loving way. She knows that I am hard on myself, so she knows what my strengths and weaknesses are. When it comes to kind of parenting myself, is I expect myself to do the best I can at all times, always. And if something turned out to be better than what my best was, for some reason I feel like I still should have done it. Somehow my best should have been better, even if I had no clue that my best needed to be better. And that's the way I am on myself. I'm always going to push myself. That's just my kind of framework. So she does a great job of helping me give encouragement and give support to me whenever things maybe don't work out. Now, I had to develop a lot of that a long way. I got my parents that helped me along the way. I didn't meet my wife till I was 35, so I had a lot of time kind of developing that internally, but I've had a lot of external help as well. And that's where, for you might be finding yourself in a place that you're giving what your best is, but you're exhausted. You're worn out. You might be missing a few things here or there, but you're doing the best you can. You know you're doing the best you can, and you're just struggling with how to catch up on those things that might be falling by the wayside. that's where the podcast of Work With Yourself, which was podcast number 279, can be very helpful. So this is what the listener found for themselves, is they're giving their best. But what they can do to work with themselves is to say, okay, well, where am I at right now? Where I'm at right now, like where their ideal would be, is I crush my client's work, I do all the paperwork, I do everything, I also crush my workouts, and everything goes perfect. But where they are right now is they're doing it in business, they're doing it with their clients, but they're kind of falling by the wayside at their own stuff. So that's why they reached out. That's why they want to, why they're going to get some help. Is I can help with the nutrition and training programming, simplifying what they do. I can also help with accountability by checking in every week, check in on progress, check in on adherence, help answer the questions of, how do we follow the program? What are ways in which we might have to adjust the program? Now that we're seeing results, what do we change from there? Like answering a lot of those questions. And it helps with motivation. Whenever they struggle, they can let me know they're struggling and I can help, or even just knowing that I'm there. That helps them as well. So if you're struggling to parent yourself, if you're struggling to find that balance between expecting the best of yourself but giving yourself grace when you fall short, don't beat yourself up anymore, okay? It's okay. You're doing okay. You're doing well. You're doing your best. What you can do is to work to refine what you're giving your best to. Maybe there's things you're doing that we can kind of adjust or modify, and you don't have to quite give so much to those things. Then get help where you need it. So refine what you do and then get help at what you're struggling to do. Podcast number 251 is a really good podcast. It's a mindset podcast titled Drop the Right Ball. And it talks about in different seasons of life, there are certain things that we can't let go of, but there are certain things that we can. For that season, we have to drop that ball. We have to just let it go. But we can come back at another season, pick it back up, and get going again. So in Drop the Right Ball, it's talking about like juggling. If you're juggling, say, 5 balls, 3 of them are glass and 2 are rubber. Well, you can drop the rubber one and it'll bounce back up, right? If you drop the glass one, breaks and you're, out of luck. So in podcast 251, it talks about it's okay to drop the right ball and how we can help determine which one is the right one to drop. Podcast 596 is a mindset podcast titled Calming the Whirlwind. That's going to help you kind of reduce the stress of everyday life, and that can help you kind of have more to give then to the areas that are falling behind. And we have podcast number 571, which is a training podcast, which is titled Motivation, Information, Accountability. Right now, if you're struggling to do well with your nutrition and training, you're probably struggling with one of those 3 things. You're struggling with the motivation to do it, you're struggling with the right information, like the right things to actually do, and you're struggling with accountability. So if you listen to podcast 571, training podcast titled Motivation, Information, Accountability, that'll help a lot. Okay? So simplify what you do so you have more of your best to give to other things, and then get help at the things that are falling behind. So, for example, I don't do grocery shopping. I live in a city-ish enough area that we can do Instacart. So I haven't gone grocery shopping in probably 2 years because it takes forever and it annoys me. So I do Instacart. My wife and I get a cleaning service to come in once a month and help clean the bathrooms and stuff. So it makes it easier, get a little bit of a deep clean on things. We do our best, but it's nice to have somebody come in once a month and just help kind of back that up and make it better. There's nutrition tracking apps you can do to help with tracking your food more accurate, but also simple. And then there's free programming. We have podcast number 1205, which is a training podcast titled Free Programming. So there's free programming there. And then there's 40 million programs out there in the world. So if you're wanting to know which ones I support, you can check out podcast 1205. But you can get programming. So work with yourself. Where are you right now? Refine what you're doing, and then get help with what you're struggling with. Okay? The last podcast I will leave you with, and I encourage you to check out, is podcast number 488. It's a mindset podcast titled Brutal Honesty, the Tough Love Balance. So how you can balance being tough on yourself, motivating yourself, pushing yourself, but loving yourself, and giving yourself grace when you need it. So I wish you the best of luck. If you're finding yourself in this place where you're giving your best, you're burned out, and you just don't know what to do, hopefully today's podcasts have helped. Hopefully the podcast I mentioned will help, but also you can always reach out. I'm always happy to help. I'm always available. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you like our podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people we can help. So you can share it on social media, whether it's whatever podcast player you're listening to now. We also have them coming up on YouTube now and also on LinkedIn. There's a way for me to link it there as well. So podcast is kind of getting around. You can share it on any media outlet or whatever the proper phrase is for that media platform. Whatever you find convenient for you, share it on that if you don't mind. Just helps us reach more people so we can help more people. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, people who financially support the podcast, which you can now do on our website. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every single day. I want to keep it for free. I want to keep it without a bunch of ads, and it's really only possible due to the donations. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate your financial support. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.